We are hemorrhaging officers. Yes, I've been bit. Yes, I've been assaulted. Yes, I've been punched. I've been spat at and everything else. Sometimes it is completely unavoidable. Now I've had people say the most fucking disgusting things to me.
Give me an example.
I'm going to cut your mum's throat and fuck her. I'll rape your children. You've heard it all. There's some horrendous things that people say.
Talk to me about Poo Watch. What is that?
Some of the people what they're hiring, they're not robust enough. I've heard of stories of officers needing emotional support hamsters, for fuck's sake.
Hamsters?
A support hamster, emotional support hamster. There was one officer who had to have an emotional support snail. There was one officer who, if they felt anxious, they could put a blanket over their head and they didn't have to go out to answer any calls. I still think about incidents what I dealt with. The first hanging I went to, the sight of brains on the floor. You know, when someone's had their head caved in with a claw hammer. It was the worst case I'd ever dealt with. They get nothing at court anyway. The courts don't want people in jail. Man who strangles his partner, suspended sentence. Somebody posts something online, immediate custodial sentence. Immediate.
Can we trust the police force? I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health. Jay.
Liam.
Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
#1 best-selling author, The Job's Fucked, The Secret Diary of a Police Officer, Jay Darkmoore. Off the back of this book, that is why you are here. So thanks for coming on. Can we trust the police force?
I think you can trust the individual officer that'll turn up to your house when you need them. When it comes to the overall efficacy of the police, I don't really think we can. And that's because the people at the very top who sit in their ivory tower and they call the shots, they have their own agenda in mind. So, for example, somebody calls the police for support, call it a domestic incident. Say, for example, you have an argument with your partner. The officers who will turn up to that incident will try and do their best. They'll speak to you, they'll speak to you, they'll speak to your partner. If at any point more than likely, if at any point your partner says, yeah, you know, we had a bit of an argument. At some point I got a little bit nervous, a little bit scared because, yeah, you know, it got a bit out of hand. I don't want him locked up. I don't want to make a complaint or anything like that. You've never been in trouble with the police before. You're not known to the police whatsoever. That officer then has to contact their supervisor who isn't there and they go in, there's no incident here, there's no crime. It's a standard argument which has just gotten a little bit out of control. But what we're finding is because of statistic chasing, those officers are then being forced to put handcuffs on people. So when they make that arrest, they have no accountability over that case then. So they don't need to make contact with the victim. Basically, they lock up and they drop off and then that's their job done. Because cops are now being graded on how many arrests that they complete. Right. They're being targeted with their stop searches, their arrests, the traffic stops, their intelligence reports. Now, if you've got a supervisor breathing down your neck saying, okay, there might not be any crime here, or you need to take positive action, so therefore you need to arrest somebody, being arrested can have a massive impact on somebody's life, to the point where I've even been told people have ended their lives because of the amount of stress it's taken on them when they've been on bail. Mm. So can you trust the police? You can trust the officer in front of you to have a moral compass, but a lot of the time the decisions what they are there to make, the decisions what they make are taken out of their hands by a supervisor that isn't even in the room. They're being forced to make decisions which they don't want to do. And that completely destroys the morale of the officer. Mm. And it completely destroys the service to the public, the faith in the police. And it also means that when things do get out of hand and you really do need the police, you see the police as a punitive service rather than one to support you. Mm. It means that victim support is through the toilet. It means that perpetrators and offenders are getting away with it. But the police look good because they've got so many extra stats in there, so many extra stats being ticked. So then they can say, in particular when it comes to cases of domestic violence, they can put forward a case and go, we take positive action against violence against women, for example. Because we're not looking at the actual result of whether someone gets convicted. We're not looking at the result of what happens post-arrest. We just see it as we've had a 20% increase in arrests.
Well, it's mind-blowing to think that police officers are arresting people based on a stats report, when we know that crime is through the roof now because it's become, well, completely unmanageable. The police are outnumbered, God knows how many to one. And when you think of all the severe crimes, now I'm not watering down domestic violence at all, and I know that you're just giving me one example, and there's probably many, many more. And our job as human beings, not just officers, is to make sure our women and children are safe, and that starts within the household. But I get the example you've given. But it blows my mind that there's so much crime that they don't need to be nicking people for stats. The crime's out there for the taking. All you've got to do is open your eyes and police properly without fear or favour. This is my opinion from what I've seen anyway. But we're talking sort of big, I mean, domestic violence is, it's also as serious as it gets. That will have long-term effects, as we both know. But what about burglaries and rapes and knife crime and murders and grooming and gang raping and top-tier drug dealing and human trafficking? I mean, there's enough to go round. You don't need to be... So they're going for the low-hanging fruit to get their stats. Is that what we're saying?
So if a police force is measured by detections, for example, so does a crime have a positive outcome? And this is why I feel that there's, in my opinion, why there's so much emphasis on online crimes now, on hate crimes. Because if you need to present cases to the Home Office and say, these are our detections, and you've only got so many resources to go around, are you going to focus on a rape which is labour intensive for a detective? It is very difficult to prove because there's not a lot of third-party evidence in a rape. A lot of rapes happen by someone you know. It could be an inter-family rape. It could be a domestic rape. Not often it's, say, when we think of a rape, we think of like a stranger rape, someone being dragged into some bushes, that sort of thing. It's generally quite rare that happens. When it comes to things such as sexual assaults, burglaries, they're a lot more resource intensive, require a lot more time and effort and officer manpower to actually deal with that. But if you've got a hate crime, you've got somebody said this nasty thing to me online. Okay, well, the evidence is right there in front of you. And the thing with a hate crime is if somebody at any point throughout the evidential chain, doesn't even have to be the victim, doesn't have to be the perpetrator of said crime. If anybody during that investigation at all says this is a hate crime, it then becomes a hate crime. And there's a lot of emphasis put on those hate crimes. For example, just going back to my thing when it comes to domestic violence, in order to get a domestic violence incident closed, it had to go to an inspector. So you have a constable, then you have a sergeant, then you have an inspector. So you have to go 2 ranks above. The only other crime where that is, I'm aware of, that is applicable is a hate crime. So they're almost putting the same severity on domestic terrorism, which can lead to homicide, as a nasty Facebook message which somebody deems as being hateful. And again, it's completely subjective. Now, in answer to your question, why do they seem to focus so much on these crimes over here and not these crimes? It's all about how the police force is measured. If it's all about the police force is measured via the outcomes, the arrests, the detections, you're going to go for the easier incidents rather than the more labour-intensive ones. Police are outnumbered so many to one. We are hemorrhaging officers, absolutely hemorrhaging officers. The Police Federation have put something out recently saying up to, they believe, 10,000 officers a year are going to be willfully resigning. 10,000 cops a year saying, I've had enough. The amount of messages I get every day saying, I'm hanging up my handcuffs, I'm done. And it's rarely because of an incident they've been to. Of course, there's the effect of cumulative trauma, which needs to be, can't be understated. But the main reason why people leave is because of the organisation itself. It's because of the leadership. It's the people that are in these positions of power implementing and pushing down their own rhetoric and their own agenda, which then the officers have to execute, which again leads back to that. I don't feel like I'm doing the right thing. I'm arresting somebody for something which they shouldn't be arrested for. My autonomy of my decision-making is taken out of my hands. So that's why so many cops are leaving. And on the front end, they're struggling to recruit officers as well. So in my old force, the population of the town I worked in had about 250,000 to 300,000 people. How many officers do you think were available at any time to answer a 999 call for a population of 300,000 people?
25.
Less.
12.
Less. Sometimes these were parading on with 8 officers. Maybe 10. And minimum staffing, they would say, okay, well, it's the minimum staff we can have to answer 999 calls on response is 12. But suddenly that minimum staffing becomes the threshold. It becomes the baseline. So it's no longer minimum. So if we hit 12, we're okay. But out of those 12 officers, you've then got what's called hidden demand. So 12 officers might parade on. Okay, well, this officer, there's somebody at custody who you need to go and interview. That's down to 11. Okay, we need 2 people at hospital because someone's been arrested, say they swallow drugs, funny enough, when they get remanded. Okay, now we're down to 9. Then we've got appointments. So that's 8. You get a nasty scene. You get a bad car accident. You get, a serious incident what happens, such as like a murder. Suddenly, you've got barely any cops left. So cops are going off with stress. Cops are being burnt out, which then is a vicious cycle because less officers means more demand, which then means more stress, which then means more burnout, which then means more demand. So even if it wasn't focused on statistics and it was just, okay, we want to police the proper things, what we join to police. We want to catch the murderers. We want to catch the rapists. We want to deal with the grooming gangs. We want to do all this stuff. Simply don't have the manpower or the capability to be able to do so anyway. And then you've got, like I said, the whole decision-making is taken out of your hands. It's an absolute shit show of a state of affairs, what we're in currently, when it comes to our police force.
So 10,000 police officers a year willfully handing their notice, and that means that they'll sacrifice their pension with that as well.
Yeah, it's getting to that point.
So they're putting their morals way before their line of duty, because the line of duty is the line is very blurred now, isn't it?
Yeah. The main reason why I left was because of that.
What made you join?
Good question, to be fair. I used to be delivered. Well, there's a few. It's kind of multi-layered. My mum's ex-husband was a police officer, and he did like 35 years front line, which I don't know if he needs a medal or a psychiatric assessment for doing so long. But
it was different probably back then, wasn't it?
Very much different, yeah. He used to say, "Oh, all these rules now, I'd get kicked out if they stop breathing, they stop hitting you." I'm like, you can't really police like that anymore. You get a lot of issues. But yeah, I used to really admire him coming home and he'd be in his uniform, and he was. He was someone to look up to. The
epitome of a man.
That's it, exactly. And then there's the other reason where I used to be a delivery driver and I used to drive like a bit of a twat. So I got pulled over that many times. I just used to get talking to loads of cops. So I thought, you know what? Alex, so I'm one cop actually turned around to me and said, because I said to him, "Oh, how do you get in?" He said, "Well, you're clearly good at talking to people. You're good when, and all the rest of it." I got pulled over loads of times, never had points. Never had points either, because I was always, I don't know if I should admit this, but I was always okay at just generally talking to people. I never played the game, so to speak. I used to just admit when I've done wrong. I was, and everything else was fine.
You allegedly taught your way out of it?
Allegedly taught my way out of it, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you joined?
And then I joined. It was one of those where I joined first as a volunteer. So there are volunteer police officers. They look exactly the same as any other cop. You wouldn't know that they're a volunteer. They have exactly the same powers. And these are people who take up the vocation. They're called special constables. And these are people who work a regular job, but they take up the vocation, they sacrifice their own time to then go out and support the public and help the public. I think it's an incredible thing what people do. So I did that for about 2 years, thereabouts. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try my hand at working full time.
I'm going to say before you move on, you must have pretty thick skin, because I remember when I was younger how specials would get treated on the street. They used to get some serious stick.
Thankfully, you can't tell the difference. And as long as the officer in front of you looks like they know what they're doing, you wouldn't assume that they're anything different, unless you know different collar numbers and different insignias on people's shoulder.
Oh, we knew back in the day.
Oh, right, okay.
We knew the specials were around town. Yeah, we knew.
A hobby bobby, as they're sometimes referred to.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got to have thick skin being in the police. I mean, I've had people say the most fucking disgusting things to me, what you can ever imagine. And it's like...
Give me an example.
I'll rape your children. I'm going to cut your mum's throat and fuck her. Fuck her in the throat, stuff like that. You've heard it all. There's some horrendous things that people say. I mean,
saying that, I've worked the door for years.
So I can imagine you've had similar as well.
I've had similar gobbing off sessions, but it's just, it's never nice to rehear it back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like outrageous, really, especially when you're doing a job protecting the public and the public are giving you that kind of stick. But yeah, so what was the transition from a special to a proper plod?
Proper Bobby. It was, I mean, now they have to do the university degree, which is a complete and utter waste of time. You do not need a university degree to be a cop. You don't need to have it. Thankfully, I did something called the IPLD, where it was, interview, assessment centre, vetting, drug test, then another surprise drug test I don't tell you about. Passed all of those. So it was fine. The training was okay. But you learn on the job. You learn when you go out and you're actually talking to people and dealing with people. You don't need a degree to be a police officer at all. You need to be able to talk to people and to not have a massive ego about yourself as well. So the officers I used to find that got assaulted the most were the ones who couldn't talk to people, whether that's from a place of insecurity, so they feel that they have to be over the top with, their authority and everything else. People don't really respect that. They don't react to it very well. Or you get officers who, I don't know, they had maybe a bit of an ego. They got in for the wrong reasons, maybe a bit of a bully. That does happen. Because naturally, if you have an organisation with like 100,000 people, if 1 in 100 are a bit of a knobhead, there's a lot of knobheads in an organisation, and that gives the entire profession a bad name. But I was found if you can talk to somebody and you can, okay, I've got a uniform on and I've got warranted powers, but I'm still a human being, just like you. You haven't chosen to be in the position you're in, to which you're now standing talking to me. So as long as you have the empathy, you won't go far wrong. Yes, I've been bit. Yes, I've been assaulted. Yes, I've been punched. I've been spat at and everything else. Sometimes it is completely unavoidable. And you have to understand that when you do go into the job, you are going to come up with conflict. But sometimes now, like some of the people what they're hiring, they're not robust enough.
They're not prepared.
No. I've heard of stories of officers needing emotional support hamsters, for fuck's sake. They have to have a support hamster, emotional support hamster. There was one officer who had to have an emotional support snail. There was one officer who, if they felt anxious, they could put a blanket over their head and they didn't have to go out to answer any calls. We don't need people like that in the police, because the police is an incredibly hard job and you will deal with some horrendous things that keep you up at night. I still think about incidents what I dealt with. I still think about the first hanging I went to, the sight of brains on the floor, when someone's had their head caved in with a claw hammer. You still think about that sort of stuff. You have to be robust enough to deal with that sort of stuff. Now, that's not to say that trauma does not accumulate, and there is a massive issue when it comes to welfare and looking after officers, which is another reason why so many cops leave and why police suicide are so high. I think I worked out in that book, I think I said, if this book takes you 8 hours to read, 4 officers will have been assaulted in this time. 1 officer will have resigned. And if you read it over the space of 10 days, 1 officer will have killed themselves, because welfare and support is just not there. But the senior leadership don't care about that as long as they get their stats and they get people through the door, regardless of the quality of those officers that are coming through the door.
They're horrible statistics to think that, and to think as well that frontline police officers are now being put in situations they don't want to be in, then not to get the support afterwards. It's like you cannon fodder yourselves. You're being hung out to dry because the decisions because I know the higher up the police rankings, the more political it becomes. Obviously, they don't give a monkeys as long as they're getting their big bonuses, and it's not them knocking on someone's door they shouldn't, or nicking somebody in the street for no real reason, or being restricted from stopping and searching, then getting the public backlash. Do you think we're going to have a real problem recruiting officers moving forward?
I think it's going to get to the point where someone picks up 999 to call for help and there's literally no one available. And that is a real fear of mine, because if we have so many officers leaving and then we're struggling to recruit officers, like why would you join? Why would you be a police officer now? The amount of shit you get, the pay is, in real terms, I think the pay's down 15% than what it used to be. You can walk into a recruitment. I know an officer who was 3-4 years in, recently resigned, is now working at B&M as a manager, earning the same money. The pension is very different to what it used to be. if you're on the top whack of salary, you're spending £500-600 a month just on your pension, which you'll be lucky to even get to retirement age. So I do feel that there's so many officers leaving, there's so many officers just completely disconnected and discontented with their role. Then there's the effects of shift work, what that can have on somebody's body, somebody's mental health, the lack of welfare support there as well. And then the absolute burnout of being so overworked via incidents which you shouldn't ever be dealing with. And then when you actually do manage to do a really good job, they get nothing at court anyway. The courts don't want people in jail. So I had the last big incident I dealt with, I worked so much with this lady. She was a wonderful lady, and I'm really happy that I got to help her. She sat and detailed to me an absolute horrendous litany of things what had happened to her. She'd been strangled, she'd been assaulted, she'd been control and coercive behaviour. You know, it was the worst case I'd ever dealt with.
This was bona fide domestic violence.
This guy had stalked her. He'd turned up to her house. He actually, the day he got locked up was because he was hanging around this girl's house, banging on the door and windows and everything else after she told him repeatedly, leave me alone. He turned up to work. He was obsessed. He was a murder waiting to happen, this. And the police went in and spoke to the victim, who was then detailing all this. And he turned up, banging on the door, going, why are you speaking to my girlfriend? Pissed out his head, why are you speaking to my girlfriend? So in his head, he still believed they were together. He was never going to let this girl go. Then when I got talking to her, she didn't want to make a complaint at first. She just wanted it to stop. And I said, the only way this is going to stop is if you let us help you. Absolutely terrified, abject fear, high risk as they come. We do something called a video interview. So for 2 hours, she sits here like this. And obviously I was trained how to do it. So I'm extracting all this information with her. And I'm sitting, mate, I'm getting choked up listening to what this girl's saying on all the awful stuff, what's going on. He got locked up. He admitted to stalking, but said, I'm not a stalker. He admitted to everything what he was doing, that he was fixated, obsessed, everything else. And he could never see a life without her, which is a red flag to me. Plus then there was strangulation, everything else involved. He then got bailed. He got bailed, and then he got arrested again. And for an hour and a half, I had that many offences and evidence put to him. It was a no-comment interview, and it was an hour and a half of no comment. The amount of things so you can imagine the scale of this investigation. He then went to court, and he got a suspended sentence for what he'd done because he said he was sorry and he went guilty. So even when you put in all the work and you help a proper victim, and I hate that term proper victim, but a serious case, which was a murder waiting to happen, they walk free because the courts do not take domestic abuse seriously. They don't take offence. I mean, I've known people who, sexual assaults, stuff like that, they get a suspended sentence, they get community work. And yet, of course, we see in the news people who do something much less severe, but they get an immediate custodial sentence, they get remanded into custody and then they go to prison straight away. So there's no like benchmark for what will land someone in jail. There's no severity. If you commit this kind of incident, you're definitely going to go to prison. Because you might lock somebody up and do a full investigation, they go to jail for a little bit, and you can have something 10 times as bad and you walk free. And when you've done all that work, you're kind of like, why do I bother? I've done so much work on this case. I've sacrificed my time, my attention. You go home, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about the investigation. Some cops do work at home. They take the laptops home with them and they're working on cases and stuff, completely unpaid. And for what? The courts let them walk free.
Well, if you was a conspiracy theorist, you would think, I mean, even if you wasn't a conspiracy theorist, you would think that the people higher up the food chain within the force or the institution, whatever you want to call it now, I don't believe it's a police force anymore, a police farce maybe, but it's as if the people at the top of the chain are actually setting frontline officers up to fail. They want them to be hated by the public because you've seen genuine crimes get swept aside and the public see that. Viewing galleries are there for all to see. And these arrests and jail terms and hefty sentences for being in the wrong group chat or putting something out on Facebook or X, that the government don't approve of and they're getting sent to jail, it's there for the country to see, for the world to see. And now the world is actually looking at the UK. Like the police force in the UK are under the microscope world over. So I don't envy anybody in that force. But I still see some of the people, because I've been going to these protests up and down the country just to see the vibe. I consider myself a journalist now. I ask as many questions as I can to find out as much information as I can about someone's life, experience, job, perspective. You look at the world one way, you're just going to get one answer. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be moldable, movable. I want my opinions to change based on new evidence. So when I've been to these protests and I've seen the anti-racists protesting against people that aren't racist, well, it's all white middle-aged men. I do not want to quote Gary Neville for the record. Fucking what a imbecile that man is. But you've got these people sort of trying to amplify. Well, they are amplifying racism without there being the racism they're accusing people of being. So I've been there to get a sense of the left-hand side, the right-hand side, who really stands for something, who's got the actual purpose, who wants change, who's there because they've got nothing else better to do. But also, I want to look how the police are reacting. And so I'm seeing police officers ferry in these counter-protesters who I believe are just there to agitate and cause trouble unnecessarily because the whole country's concerned about where we're going. So I've seen the police ferry them in, mollycoddle them, be very kind to them and protective when they don't need to be. And then I had an incident recently where I put my hand out to shake an officer's hand at a protest to thank him for keeping law and order, because I appreciate you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't at the moment. And he refused to shake my hand. I've said this a couple of times before, but I'll say it again because I'm not anti-police. I actually feel sorry. I think police officers at the moment are victims of the police institution. But still, if I put my hand out to shake someone's hand and I feel like we're supposed to be on the same team and he's got his arms crossed saying we don't need to shake hands, it really, really upset me.
Yeah.
What would you have done in that situation? You're at a protest and you've got people protesting against migrant hotels, you've got counter-protesters, you've got the police in the middle trying to balance it out, and then someone that's been perfectly friendly comes up and says, thanks for what you're doing. Would you have shook their hand or would you have said, we don't need to shake hands?
It's a hard one because I have shaken people's hands before. When someone goes, thank you for your work. Yeah, okay, that's fine. In a situation like that, though, it's because it can be considered quite a politically charged movement. You've got the right side, you've got the left side. The police aren't allowed to show political favour, even though that's very clear that happens. Is it from an organisational level? Organisationally, it's okay, well, it almost looks like we will support this movement, but go against this movement or be more firm against this movement. In that situation, I don't think I would have shaken your hand. Not because I don't like you or I was disrespectful toward yourself. It's a case of my supervisor looking over my shoulder, and if I go to shake somebody's hand at a political event, that can be seen as me showing political favour to somebody else. So I can understand both perspectives. I can understand your perspective of going, I just wanted to thank you for a good job, and the upset that caused and the sense of bias as to why they didn't shake the hand. But I can also understand the officer's perspective where it's going, if I shake your hand, as much as I might want to, if I shake your hand, I can then get hauled over the coals for showing political favour one way or another. Does that make sense? It
makes perfect sense. So you as a human being, as an individual, you wouldn't have shook my hand. So I'll ask you the question to play devil's advocate. Would you have shaken any counter-protesters' hands if they'd have come up and said, thanks for doing a good job?
No, because then you're a hypocrite, aren't you? You can't say, you are clearly representing this side of the argument. I will shake your hand and all the rest of it. But then this side of the argument, I'm not going to shake your hand and say I'm politically unbiased. You would have to have that stability of opinion for both sides. You would have to remain independent, regardless of who's in front of you. So, no, if I made a decision not to shake your hand, that means I can't or won't shake anyone else's hand because I don't want to show, like I said, political favour to somebody else.
Now, being completely impartial, I respect that. It's like, okay, I understand your predicament. But what triggered me was the fact that for the last 2 years, well, in fact, for a lot longer than that, and you can tell me if you've seen this or not as well, I've seen a 2-tier policing system on steroids. So where I've seen the police cozy up to people on the left, shall we say, or it's good versus bad at the moment. It's not right versus left. It's all completely fucked. But where I've seen the police cozy up to counter-protesters, agitators, real far left-leaning lunatics, unnecessary liberals, I sort of think, well, okay, let's see which way you swing. Thanks. Okay, so you're not going to shake my hand, but we've seen on the news for God knows how many years that you're arresting people that are protesting against genuine causes with genuine concern, but you're going in with kid gloves on the counter-protesters that turn up wearing masks.
Yeah.
So that was my frustration, was the fact that I've seen two-tier policing for so many years now. I mean, the last 2 years, it's just been, I think it's undeniable. What would you say?
You can't deny two-tier policing doesn't exist. Now, I want to caveat that. When it comes to the officer on the ground, it isn't a case of you're getting a radio message saying, I'll tell you a story now. So when researching my next book called The System's Fucked, I've spoken to loads of police officers. And I've always asked a question to them, does two-tier policing exist on like the frontline level? 99% have said no. We're not being directed to arrest someone based off skin colour or ethnicity or, cultural sensitivities. But there was one who said they were at a petrol station and there was a white Eastern European male and then I believe it was a Muslim Asian male as well. What happened was them two got into an argument. It was the Muslim gentleman who started the argument and the officer on the scene relayed this to their sergeant asking for advice. Like both kicking off, I believe this guy started it, what's your advice? And they said, lock up the white European because that will cause less cultural tensions. That's the only example I've heard of that happening on the front line. My own experience, I haven't not arrested someone due to political ideology or cultural sensitivities. If you've done something wrong, you're coming in, if I can justify it, irrespective of where you may sit. On a organisation level, we can't deny that two-tier policing doesn't exist because, like you've said, kid gloves for one, more robust for the other. Dancing at Pride, not happy to shake somebody's hand at a Unite the Kingdom rally. But I also believe that I think it was Northamptonshire Police have been recently taken to court about their activity at Pride because they were taking part in Pride, but then there was a counter-protest and they weren't taking part in that one. So it clearly shows a political divide there. And I believe they were then taken to court to say, well, you can't do that. The police have to be apolitical. The courts, on the other hand, 100% politically captured. 100%. We just have to look at the Southport riots. We just have to look at when it comes to hate crimes, when it comes to, incitement to violence, incitement to cause damage. Somebody posting a tweet gets immediate custodial sentence, which, by the way, to remand somebody with no PNC record is fucking impossible. I've been on the phone to a CPS lawyer before at 2 a.m. saying like, this guy's going to go out and he's going to kill his missus, or this person's Joey drug dealer and he's just going to go out, he's going to flee the country or whatever. No, well, we don't want to remand him. We think he'll be all right on tag, or we think bail will work. So when I heard that a certain individual posted something on X and then was remanded in custody, I'm like, that just does not happen. Why on earth has that happened? And then when we look at the sentencing, because of course, like we know, like I mentioned before, man who strangles his partner, suspended sentence. Somebody posts something online, immediate custodial sentence, immediate. And the guilty plea as well. The courts are massively politically captured. I believe that in the higher rungs of the police, depending on the ideology of that superintendent, that assistant chief constable, that then feeds downwards, which then reflects on how the attention is when it comes to officers on the ground. So on a ground level, I don't believe two-tier policing exists. Organisationally, I think it's pretty evident that it does. And that's not okay because you should police without fear or favour. The people at the very top should be making decisions on where they put the resources based on demand and based on, okay, well, what do the public we serve, what do they want? But that's clearly not happening. Because like you mentioned earlier, burglaries are going undetected, car thefts, I was speaking to an officer the other day and he said, we don't even go to car thefts anymore. We just don't go. They get crime number for their insurance and then that's it. I mean, cops can't be proactive now. Cops can't go and, wait outside a house or, if you think there's some drug dealing going on. Cops can't pull over cars if they think a car looks a bit dodgy, if there's a lot of burglaries in an area. They just don't have the time. They don't have the time. They don't have the resources available to do it because they're so bogged down with the emergency calls, which need attention then and there, that it's impossible for officers to go out and do proactive policing.
What would happen to an officer? Well, what happens to officers that just refuse to take orders?
So if I was a police officer now, chances are I would be graded green, amber or red. This is what's now happening.
There's a grading system now.
There's a grading system. So if you're an officer that is on green, you've hit your arrest quota for the month, you've got enough stop searches, traffic stops, all the rest of it.
You've built your score system up.
You've built your score system up. Completely unethical. Completely unethical. Because, if I then start dipping below that, I'll be on amber. And if I go into red, I go on what's called an action plan, a development plan. You're on a development plan for long enough, you're getting sacked. So unless you're hitting these quotas and hitting these stats, you're likely going to lose your job. So officers that are attending incidents and going, we can deal with this another way. We don't have to lock them up. They're going, yeah, but we need our stats, don't we? And plus, when you've dealt with it, you never see that incident again. You don't have to do the investigation afterwards. So there's no accountability there for the officers anyway in a lot of the forces because they have investigation units that then take it all up and deal with it, which then creates a worse service for the public because the cops have less time to deal with it. So if you're an officer who pushes back, you're probably going to get your ear chewed off, or you might be put on an action plan, or you might even move units completely to somewhere you don't like and maybe try and force you out that way because you're not towing the line. So the officers that have a moral compass normally burn out and they leave. The officers who are happy to follow the orders and do as they're told and kind of swallow that reason why they started in the first place, they're the officers that generally stay there longer. But that doesn't mean they like what they're doing. It just means that they can separate from, I don't want to do this, but I've got to. Because there's only so many times. Like, I've had officers tell me that when they're at an incident and it's happening right there in front of them, or even before they get to the incident, they're having their supervision contacting them saying, this is what you will do when you get there. They have said this on the call, you will arrest when you get to this incident. You've not even got there yet. And how many times do we hear people saying, I said this to get you here quicker. Oh, actually, it's not happened how I said it over the phone. I was mistaken, or I was upset and I thought they said this thing, or I thought they had this, but they didn't. Based off that information on the call, cops are then being directed to arrest. So why do you need all the decision-making abilities? Why do you need all the training in safeguarding? Why do you need all these other things which make someone good at decision-making and problem-solving when you attend an incident and all the other information you get, if that decision has already been made before you even get there? It's morally inept and it's completely wrong. And the only people who benefit, it's not the public. It's not the officers that I have to put the handcuffs on people and do that. It's the supervisor at the top who then can present it to their next promotion board and say, domestic arrests or arrests have gone up 30% under my watch. Nice one. I then get promoted and move on to another unit. That's no longer my problem anymore. I've come in, completely fucked it up, and now I'm off somewhere else. And the people that suffer are members of the public like me and you when we do need the help of the police, and the officers who join for the right reasons who can no longer do their job. Like I said, that's why I left. Got to the point where I just could not see what was going on anymore. And I thought, I need to go. I've tried my absolute best. I can no longer help people.
I was going to ask you, did you join the police force to fight crime or feel important?
Yeah, okay. It's nice to have an important role in society and to be that protector of people and to look after people. But I didn't join to drive fast cars. I didn't really join to arrest people. Locking people up, even though I had a very high arrest statistic on my unit, I never really got any joy from locking people up. And that's why I got so invested in dealing with cases of domestic violence, because I know family members that have been through it. I've been through it. And I know on a micro level, you can dramatically change somebody's life if you manage to get that awful perpetrator away from that person, you can irrevocably change someone's life if you do a good job. So that was why I joined. I joined to look after people, take care of people, and make the world a safer place for my own family. There are some people who think, oh, great, I get to wear a uniform. I get to drive the fast cars. I get to, be important. I get to have this, I don't know, authority over other people. Those people join for the wrong reasons. You join the police because you want to look after people and you want to help people. And that is why I joined.
When you said you were leaving, did they try and fight for you? Because I'll tell you for why. Because if I met you in a pub, even today, I would think you was old Bill.
Oh, really?
100%. Yeah, you stink of police. That's not a bad thing. But surely they would fight for someone of your caliber. That's what I mean. You can tell that you've got that police officer thing about you.
I don't know if I should be thankful of that or not. No, they didn't, unfortunately. No, they didn't, because I pushed back a lot. So I used to push back on cases where, I had to go and interview someone. They'd be like, why has this person even been arrested? Or I'd be looking at a case and be like, I'm not bailing this person. This person should never have been here in the first place. So I used to push back a lot. So it was maybe a bit of a problem because I wasn't just a yes man. I wasn't just doing what I was told. So I did have my superintendent collar me in the corridor, I think on my last day, and basically say like, oh, why are you leaving and all the rest. Well, I was honest, and I said, well, it's just not the job for me anymore. And he was like, okay, what are you doing next? Oh, well, I'm going to look at doing this. Okay. Right. See ya. I was like, I've done a lot of really good work for you in particular, because all the detections and everything else I get make you look better. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to specialise. I wanted to go on what was called the stalking unit. So I was on the investigation unit for near the end of when I left. And then I wanted to go on the stalking unit. However, they wouldn't let me move because he said, oh, we don't have enough staff. When in reality, I just think I was too valuable because I was more highly trained than a lot of the officers on my unit. But they were saying, but you can go to this other unit, which you don't want to go on. But if you want to move, you can go on that. But that'll be in like 12 months. So for the time being, so I felt like they were just carrot and stick, but without the carrot, just stringing me along. And eventually I was like, hey, I've had enough. Going home, head in my hands, just thinking, what am I doing? I'm locking people up, which, well, no, I didn't personally. I'm dealing with people who should not be arrested. Let me give you an example of what's the shit show what it's currently in. So near the end of my time on frontline policing, I did about 8 years frontline and about 18 months on investigations. So near the end of my 8 years on frontline, when this stats focus was really starting to take hold, I went to an incident and the call was, I've just seen my neighbour push their partner. Okay, so we go there. It's about 2 a.m. We get there. We knock on the door. Everything seems fine. They can't understand why we're there. Now, of course, sometimes people can present, the police come in, right, act normal. You get an instinct for that. Is this just an argument or is there something more sinister going on here? And for all pretends and purposes, me and my colleague, who were very experienced, went to this incident. We thought, everything's fine. Turns out the male was heavily autistic and was having, was really struggling to kind of regulate himself. So what his missus has done is he's gone, back door, go outside. So yes, she has technically pushed him. It's technically an assault. Are we going to arrest somebody? Never been in trouble with the police before for basically trying to look after the partner. So we said, right, okay, well, what we're going to do is one of you needs to go somewhere else for the night. Safeguard him. All right, cool. There's also 3 young children asleep upstairs. We then relay this information to my supervisor. My supervisor says, nope, you have to arrest. So I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. That's not appropriate. I turn around, my colleague's sticking this lady in handcuffs. All hell breaks loose. It's like someone threw a grenade in that room. This lad who was already struggling with his mental health starts going off on one. The woman is there absolutely crying her eyes out. We've got 3 young children who've now come downstairs and are going, why are you arresting my mum? What are you doing? It's absolute carnage. What happens is we manage to calm everything down. We take the lady to custody. She goes, no comment on interview. She's released within half an hour. Not ideal. She should never have been locked up anyway, because that means that lady's now got a PNC record. She goes for a job. She'll see she's been arrested before. The next day, I then get the curly finger from my sergeant. We're going to what's called the room of doom. The room where you're going to get a bollocking.
Curly finger.
Yeah, exactly. So I get fucking pulled in by my sergeant and she goes, why did you push back at that incident last night? I said, because the my powers, I didn't think it was necessary to arrest. We could have dealt with that a different way. And I also said, and then she said, so you're telling me that a vulnerable male was assaulted and you didn't want to take positive action? And it's funny how someone can twist something who wasn't there based on little information, isn't it?
Very passive-aggressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, not so bad. And then I said, well, there's also 3 young children upstairs. She said, well, they should have been what was called PPO'd, so police protection order, emergency social care. So rather than that sergeant say to me, you're there, I trust what you're saying, you can separate, you know all the training, safeguarding, you do that. She would rather me have arrested the mum, put her on bail for 3 months so she can't go home, leave a heavily autistic male in the house, mental health in the toilet, and put the 3 children into emergency social care rather than push back on what she was being told by her supervisors when they put down the order to arrest. And that is what's happening all the time, is the decisions making is being taken away from frontline cops who are there dealing with it. And it's the frontline cops who then get all the shit.
Yeah, you've got to show them a little bit of mercy, ain't you, when you're seeing what's going on out there. And I want to go back to why I said that I would know you as old Bill just by talking to you in the pub, because I don't get in trouble with the police now. I'm now seeing police prancing around at Pride wearing heels and makeup. Mind-blowing. You're paid to protect. You can't protect people when you're dancing. You've got to be vigilant at all times, particularly now how volatile it is out there. But when I used to get in trouble with the police many, many years ago, sort of decades ago, I'll be getting arrested by men like you, which is how I would scan you and think police officer, because you remind me of the police officers that I used to deal with that used to interview me after I'd had a punch-up outside a nightclub or something. And now I just see police officers completely, well, they're not like they used to be, which is a problem. And the ones that were effective back in the day, that can, think for themselves and make the right decision, they're leaving, you being one of them. So, yeah, that wasn't, I suppose it's however you take it, but it weren't meant to be an insult.
I take it as a compliment.
It just reminded me of the good old days when I used to get nicked. So what about abuse of power? Did you witness much of that? And if so, where is the power most abused?
As in supervisors or like...
Could be anybody. Let's say frontline officer that's got his badge and thinks it's a licence to do what he likes. I mean, we've seen some, what's that police officer's name that's been sent to jail recently? I mean, if that weren't an abuse of power, he got the girl in his car.
Oh,
Wayne Couzens.
Wayne Couzens? Yeah, piece of shit. Hang him.
Yes.
I've seen some officers maybe a bit more heavy-handed than was necessary in quite a volatile situation. Abuse of power in the sense of maybe, I don't know, being over the top, aggressive, or no, I don't think I did. Generally, the officers I worked with, on the whole, were quite good. They joined for the right reasons. They did the right thing. People who did go too far would have been reported and got reprimanded, and they either got sacked. There was an officer who I was aware of who pulled someone over for drink driving. He then began a relationship with this person. He was actually sent to prison for that because he got reported. In my experience, whenever somebody has gone over the line, they have been reported. Abuse of power, if it happens, it gets dealt with. Okay. Because the professional standards are so overzealous now that people who do serious wrong do get caught and they do get dealt with, to the point where they're so over the top. People who, like you saw with Long Castle, he called someone a little he called a lad with a knife a little bitch, and he got fired for it. So it's kind of like they've gone completely the other way now, where cops are being investigated because they use robust language. That
was outrageous.
Yeah.
And didn't his colleague grass him up?
It was his colleague, yeah.
Fuck's sake.
And I'm all for the integrity. I'm all for the integrity line. And if you see someone doing something which is fucking out of order, that person needs to be held accountable.
But it's got to be out of order.
It's got to be out of order.
Yeah, calling someone a bitch that's carrying a knife doesn't quite fit the bill.
That could have been dealt with by the sergeant pulling him in and going, mate, fucking calm down next time, and it'd be dealt with like that.
Talk to me about Poo Watch. What is that?
Poo Watch. So, I never knew this when you joined the police. But if somebody has swallowed drugs, they go on what's called constant observations, which means that there is an officer for 24 hours a day sat there with them in custody. If they've swallowed drugs, they have to go on what's called the glass toilet. The glass toilet means that you have to take this person when they need to have a bowel movement. It's like they climb up there, they sit on the top, they then have to have a crap, and they have to have 2 clear bowel movements. And it's to see if there is any drugs in their system. Most of the time, when someone says they swallow drugs, they're probably not. So you basically just got to watch someone shit a couple of times, and they can only be taken off poo watch once they've done 2 clear bowel movements. So we are paying for officers to sit there and wait for somebody to have a poo. That happens.
I'm glad I know where my taxes are going. They're being well spent.
And the best bit is, so when it comes down, it's like a jet wash.
When the stool comes down?
Yeah. So if you imagine, like we had one lad once. He had an all-day breakfast and he hid a piece of sausage. So when he climbed up, he basically threw this bit of sausage down to look like he'd had a crap. So we have to wash it and see if there's anything inside it. It's the shit job. Basically, if you pissed off your supervisor, you're on poo watch. I think the longest we had someone in it for was, I think, about 40 days. I think that's the record in my old force.
40 days?
Something like
watching
that.
someone shit?
Yeah, because he just wouldn't go. We said, can we not, is there a thing where you can lax it? And he said, no, against human rights, obviously we can't do anything like that. So you have to sit and wait for someone to do 2 clear bowel movements.
Funny, this human rights thing. What about the human rights of the man that's being forced to watch someone take a shit for 40 days?
Well, unfortunately, that's your job. You have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, when you look at the proportionality of something like that, someone's got a bag of cocaine on them, 6 months prison max, if they get sent to prison at all. Chances are they get a fine, they get a caution or whatever. Is it proportionate for that small detection to have an officer sat there who's on 30, 40 grand a year for 12 hours a day watching for somebody to go to the toilet? To me, I'd say not. Now, multiply that by 3 shifts a day, maybe for 3 or 4 days, for the sake of that. We did have one lad who had a crap in his cell, fished it out, and then swallowed it again. He'd already been there for 3 or 4 days.
Fucking hell.
Mate, cops don't deal with the best people in the world.
But let's bring it back to you. Let's finish the interview with going, mate, we'll shift from the police and talk about Jay. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your uncle's murder.
Oh, wow. Okay, so my uncle was a doorman at a big club in Manchester. I was very young at the time. I was 2 years old. He was a doorman at a big club in Manchester. He was involved with some organised criminal gangs. Anyway, he was shot. He was murdered by someone in this gang. My father then was tasked, because he was involved with it all as well. My father was then tasked to move his body, to transport his body in a car. Problem is, he fucked it up. So then the car was then found. This guy was then caught, which meant that my dad then had to flee to the south of the country. Never saw him again. Died of heroin. He was a heroin user. He died when I was about 20. I think I spoke to him once over the phone in my entire life. The officer who was then involved with the case, so something called a family liaison officer, someone who works between the police and the family to console them, to help them, to support them, he ended up marrying my mum. Which, of course, you would never, ever get away with now, but this was in the 90s. This was, like I said, 30 years ago. Interestingly, we got a knock on the door, my grandmother got a knock on the door 20 years after the murder. And it was 2 detectives saying, yeah, you know your son who you buried? Yeah, we've still got all his organs in a freezer in the neck. What do you want us to do with them? She had no idea. I didn't even know this happened. So they've taken the organs out of my uncle's body, froze them, kept them, preserved them for whatever reason, and he got buried without any organs in them. And it's she never consented to that. Is that even a thing? So, yeah. So this guy then married my mum. They were together for about 10 years. Very messy divorce, very messy breakup. Police officers. I remember coming home one day and must have been about 10 years old. two police officers in my garden. And I remember there was a plastic little cricket bat, me fucking 10 years old with a little plastic cricket bat walking into the back garden. And there were these two cops there. And the reason why they were there was because of the divorce. My mum's husband at the time was on the train track, ready to end his life. And there was loads of things. Like, my childhood's been pretty fraught with chaos, to be honest.
Was it? And what about your mental health? Spending all them years in the police force, witnessing hangings and brains on the floor and stuff that you wouldn't wish your worst enemy to see. Did it take its toll on you? Has it taken its toll on you?
Definitely had my struggles before. My girlfriend now has been an absolute rock to me in the past with it all. You learn to put on what's like, I always call it job mode. Job mode. I'm in the police now. It's kind of like you don't react. When you deal with something fucking awful, it's like you have that wall up, you have that barrier up. The problem is when that wall and that mentality starts bleeding into everyday life, when you can't feel sad for something genuine what's happening in your day-to-day life, because you've always got that wall up. So it can make you very emotionally numb, and empathy burnout is a massive issue in the police. Just because you deal with that many awful things, if you started to crack at every single one of them, you'd be an absolute wreck. You have to develop that mindset of going, okay, it's another death, it's another hanging, and so on. Or it's another person telling you the worst things imaginable what's ever happened to you. So you learn to build that resilience, because all that trauma, what you're dealing with, it's still there and it still needs to come out.
It's getting in there somehow, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Even with that wall up.
Yeah. And even though you might not deal with it there and then, it's still, you might then wake up with, having night terrors. You might find your alcohol use is going up a little bit more. You're not being able to sleep properly. You might be getting a bit more snack. That's all just signs of PTSD with things, with the accumulative trauma of what you've dealt with. And I remember one night we was, me and my girlfriend we was having a beer. It was like a Friday night, something like that. I was having a beer and we just watching TV. And the next thing I know, my head is in my hands and I'm just crying my eyes out. It was just like, for some reason, it all just went, it all just overflowed. And she was absolute star to me. She proper looked after me. And it was just that release. So, I've struggled with my mental health. I've struggled with my mental health before I joined the police. Due to stuff that's happened to me in early childhood. But I have absolutely struggled with it during the police as well. And this is when we talk about the welfare side of it. So the police can put on and say, we have these welfare days and we have this welfare truck and everything else. But the best welfare support I ever got was, I just said to my sergeant one day, I said, that job, that hanging we went to the other day, yeah, I did keep thinking about it and just went, right, okay. He put his radio down, just went, right, come on, back room. I was thinking, fucking hell, I said something wrong here. And he literally just sat here like this, me and him, and we just went, had a chat for 15 minutes. And that was all I needed, just that one-on-one.
Vent.
Just that vent. And we just was open and honest about, because he came to the incident as well. And we had a chat about it. And that was great. That human touch, that human talk with somebody. When I was arrested and then over a malicious allegation, I was arrested and then I was released. I had one cell, that was finished. I had counselling and occupational health support. That was really good. The worst I ever felt was when I was in an abusive relationship myself. And this is why I got so passionate about domestic violence and looking at men who get wrongly accused. And why I saw so much injustice when I was seeing men who, frankly, have been arrested because they're men and because the police have this agenda of positive action to arrest somebody because they have all the quotas and everything else. And I was seeing so many guys being lifted and having their lives ruined, which should never have been in that position in the first place, because I've been through it, because it happened to me. So I was in a very abusive relationship for like 6 or 7 months. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but 6 or 7 months in that environment, it feels like years. My ex-partner attacked me. I defended myself and I called the police. So I'm there covered in blood. I contacted the police and I said, girlfriend's just attacked me. I've had to hit her back to get her to stop. I'm now calling you for help. They said, well, what's she doing now? They said, well, she's in the kitchen. She's calmed down. Oh, we're not coming then. Sorry. Oh, what do you mean you're not coming? I'm calling you for help. I'm bleeding. Why not? Oh, okay. So then I had to kick her out of the house myself, and that was the last time I ever saw her. I then called the police 4 times over the space of 24 hours, asking for help. They didn't come. I was then, the next day, I was in work, in the police, and I was arrested at work because she had called and made a counter allegation. They hadn't even gone to see her. Off the back of a phone call, they deemed he's the one in the wrong. We need to arrest him. 12 hours in the cell later, put on bail. It was all, after a couple of months, it was NFA'd. The Crown Prosecution Service and their paperwork actually said, why was he arrested when we can clearly see he's the victim? We've got all of his statement. We've got all of what he said on the interview. We've got all his injuries. We've got the phone call. And it all goes against, the evidence we have goes against her. Why was he arrested? It was blatant sexism, and I sued the force for wrongful arrest in the end. But in that period of time, I'm thinking, am I going to get convicted for this? I've not done anything wrong. I've looked after myself, which I'm legally allowed to do. There's a myriad of other incidents which have happened where I've been assaulted repeatedly and I've not reported them. I'm now looking at the social services that are then involved with my family and my son. Am I going to lose my job? All these, it's a thing you wake up to in the morning and you think about it all day until you go to bed at night. So having been through it myself, and mate, I was fucking suicidal. I was on the verge, And thankfully, a good support network around me and everything was fine. Definitely the worst I've ever felt in my life. I'm all the injustice around it as well because she never got convicted. She never got convicted for anything what she did. So there's that side of it as well. But then I'm then expected to go and do a job where I'm seeing people who were in my position who I do not believe have warranted the police involvement whatsoever. And you're asking me to now try and convict this person. And I think that was a big moral shift for me because I've been on the other side of the cell door. And I've spoken to people who deal with prisoners, deal with suspects, people on bail, who have told me that as a result of this, lock somebody up because it's a stat, leave them on bail for months, people are ending their lives because the families are absolutely turned against them. They lose their jobs. They can, family relationship breakdown. The stigma as well of people thinking you're a domestic abuser. There's nothing worse than somebody who hits the partner.
Why didn't you walk away before it got to a stage where you had to hit her back?
As in the relationship in general?
Well, there'll be mixed reviews on this one. Mm-hmm. You could be in the eye of the storm, and you've got a woman attacking you. You can turn around and you can walk out and just leave that space, or you stand your ground and then you react and you hit the woman back. Obviously, there's a lot of men out there that just would always say, "Walk before you raise your hand," but it's very easier said than done. When you're in the eye of the storm and you've got somebody coming at you, there may not be a door near you. So I don't know the scenario, but I'm just curious as to why you hit her back instead of just walk out the door.
I mean, he was one of them. She was like a feral animal. It was the only way I could get her to stop. And I'm not proud that I had to do that because I've never hit a woman in my life. I'm not proud I had to do that. And sometimes I do get a comment saying, "Oh, well, you're a domestic abuser." I'm not, and I've never. I'm in a happy relationship now. I've been in for God knows, several years, and never so much as an argument. It was a case of that was the only way that I could make this person stop attacking me. This person threatened to stab me before. They'd thrown hot water in my face. They'd thrown cups at my head. They'd push me. It was an incredibly volatile relationship, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but I strongly suspect that the person I was in a relationship with, in my opinion, had some kind of personality disorder, whether that was borderline personality disorder or whether that was NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. But even if they didn't, what they did and how they treated me was still not okay. And when we look at domestic violence in general, there's a lot of emphasis on male to female domestic violence, men hurting and killing women. That is obviously a massive issue. But when we look at it as well, we see that actually 40% of victims of all domestic violence are actually men. But we don't want to talk about that bit because that's unpopular. We want to talk about violence against women and girls. We don't want to talk about sexual abuse of young boys. We don't want to talk about men who are abused by their partners because the methodology of the abuse is different. Women are more afraid of the physical violence from a man. Men are more afraid from women of the reputational damage which a female abuser can cause. There's plenty of men out there who've left a marriage or have left a relationship and now they can't see their children for no reason, or they are financially ruined. That is a form of abuse. It's just not as recognised as domestic abuse. And there's also men who will not leave an abusive partner because they're afraid of a malicious allegation. They're afraid of being accused of rape. They're afraid of being accused of domestic assault. I've dealt with plenty of cases where a male has rang the police. There was one in particular. A male rang the police on the Ring doorbell. You can see him on the phone to the police. He's got a ripped top. He's got claw marks on his face, similar to myself, claw marks on his face. And he's called the police and said, my partner's just attacked me. I'm bleeding and everything else. Cops have turned up. They've then gone into the home. They've then spoken to the female who's drunk, who has then made a counter allegation. Guess which one ended up in handcuffs? It was the man. The man ended up in handcuffs, and on an interview, he's turned around and said, I've tried to leave this woman so many times. Every time I try, I end up here because she won't let me leave without making a malicious allegation against me. And then with the cycle of abuse, following the cataclysmic incident, then comes back there. I'm sorry, I love you, let's have a, let's go back together. And then the cycle continues again. So it's male domestic abuse is something which is just not focused on as much. And I mean, to put the question back on yourself, if it was a woman who had to strike their partner to get them off them, would you ask why they hit them?
No.
So there we go. That's what I mean. It's the perception of the incident's completely different.
From a personal standpoint, I am biased with the whole men and women dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm probably the worst person to ask that because I've got a high threshold for, I suppose, abuse.
Yeah.
And I just got that in me that I would be able to stand there and take a lot of abuse, physical and verbal, and with a woman, and just say, that's just now ended us, and I'm walking away.
Yeah.
If it was a bloke, I'd ravage him like a fucking wild animal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I've spoke to so many people that have been in your situation as well, and I have to play devil's advocate by asking the question because you've also got a lot of men that have been attacked by their girlfriends that have said to me, if she wants to behave like a man, I'm going to treat her like a man. So I get both sides, and they're never straightforward.
No.
Ever. But I do know that the man gets the rough end of the deal. He is guilty just off the allegation, and his reputation is tarnished. And if he's in the limelight, a public figure, and that makes the press before it's even gone to court, it's pretty much your reputation destroyed forever. Yeah.
It's not a situation anybody ever wants to be in. And I remember seeing there was a video. It was like one of these social experiments, and it was a man is attacking a woman, not attacking, but he's being a bit rough with her in public. Within a few seconds, people running over, get the fuck off, what are you doing? Then it was the flip side, it was a woman hitting the man. And people actually started pulling the phone out and recording it and filming it and thinking it was funny. So it's almost like if the man's the abuser, it's almost like if the man's the one being abused, he's not man enough to stand up for himself. If the man tries to defend himself, the man's the abuser. So the man can't win. So when it comes to domestic abuse in relation to men are fucked on the balance of probability. So in the civil court, it isn't a case of, okay, well, can we actually prove this beyond no reasonable doubt like we need to in a criminal court? But in the civil court, it's, well, we're quite risk averse. We don't want to risk it. So yeah, grant that restraining order. It's a man who suffers. And this is a big part of, I think, male suicide, which people don't talk about, is the domestic element side, is it the side of domestic abuse. Because when I tell you, Liam, I was close to ending my life, like, that's not an understatement. If it wasn't for my son, God knows where I would have been when I was going through all that. Now, when you get people who are then alienated from their from the children. You get people who have lost their jobs. You get people who have, frankly, been a victim of a punitive system, such as the police, with how they're working right now. Due to this model of arrest first, ask questions later, abusers are using the police as a method of abuse to further exert their power and control over their victims. So if, for example, a woman tries to leave the relationship, the man can ring up and go, she's just punched me. Woman gets locked up. And vice versa is also true. So as a result of this ethos, what the police now have, we're actually making victims worse off under the guise of protecting people. And it's totally wrong and disgusting.
Well, I mean, this interview's took a turn that I weren't expecting. So my final question to you would have been, what would you say to anybody considering joining the police force, or how can the police force be saved? But rather than me ask you a specific question, because we've touched base on policing and domestic violence and wrongful arrests, you pick any one of those three. So it's important to you. What would your final message to anybody watching and listening be?
If you want to join the police, remember they are your powers. You cannot be sacked or reprimanded for doing something which you do not believe is right. When the police is based on the code of ethics, and honesty and integrity is the fucking focal point of that. It's the pillar everything else rests on. So if you join the police, make sure you keep your moral compass intact. You do an incredible job. The wrong people get promoted for the wrong reasons. I think what we need to do is we need to restructure the police force based on who's actually the best leader, and not just who makes the police force look better, because we would have a dramatically different police force overnight. To the good police officers out there, I would say, you wear a uniform with pride. It's an amazing job what you do. And despite all of the shit which gets piled on you, the world is a better and safer place with you in it. To the bad police officers and to the supervisors who get promoted off the back of stepping on other people, destroying service to the public, victimising people who shouldn't be victimised, you're an absolute disgrace in the uniform and you should resign immediately. That's what I'd say.
Okay. I will put Jay's social media links in the description. He's got a YouTube channel. I'll put Instagram, X, all the other ones in there. If you want to follow Jay's journey, please do so. Remember to like and subscribe to this page also. It takes you 2 seconds, costs you zero, and I can keep having these kind of conversations that you won't really get elsewhere. I wish the best for you for the future. People will judge the whole domestic violence thing. What I can confirm is that your girlfriend is sat right there, your current partner, who's been very supportive, even in the green room to now. So I can at least vouch that you're in a nice, peaceful, loving relationship, and it's nothing like the one you was in before. And I wish you all the best for the future.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers, brother.